and welcome to the pre-match. Last game of the USA Tour. We were kind of worried if the game is going to start on time or not and stuff like that, but we got our man on the ground over there, Brian in the Caroline, close to the area, weathering the storm or watching the weather, I should say. So it looks like we're going to start on time. Brian Shelton is with us. John made it. I don't know what the girlfriend thinks, but John is here. So we'll see how that goes. Because he almost couldn't make it. But gentlemen, the lineup is out. And I really think it's very interesting, Brian, because we knew Gravenberg and Konate was going to get a half. Yeah, John is happy. That's why I'm starting with Brian. Yeah. But what do you make of the fact that they are in the first batch and we do see Gravenberg on that thing that we just talked about on the podcast a couple of days ago, and then Konate goes into the spots where Sepp was?
So I think he may have seen everything he wanted to see out of Sepp. At the moment, I think he needs to go there and rate and see how Konate is going to go with Kwanzaa on his own right there. I mean, of course, he's seen the tapes before right there with them together during some of the I think the Carling Cup matches. I think they played together once or twice in last season. But to see with his system and see exactly where they're at, I think it's interesting with that. I think that whether he's going to do the double pivot right there, but having Gravenberg and Jones at the same time, which could be really interesting to see, or whether we're going to have Gravenberg sit back as a holder. So I think I wanted to see them get in there. I mean, honestly, right there, Gravenberg should be quick to get back on fitness. And Konate, I don't think Konate didn't play in the World Cup. I mean,
no, I don't think neither of them played. Neither of them played.
So fitness should be pretty quick for them to get back in a run because they didn't really wear themselves down at all. So I think it's good right there. Let's get the new bodies in there. I hope to see Jota get 60 minutes this time versus the 45 that he got against Arsenal, so that we can get him running up into a fitness, because I don't like the pseudo false 9 thing that we've been playing with when we don't have a number 9 in. I think it's kind of odd, and I think that we basically come there and set back a lot more than I anticipate that we will in the season.
Your boy Gravenberg, this is a huge opportunity for him, man. Because
I really went hell bent to get on this show. I know I had to be somewhere, but I was like, do we really have to go like it's raining hard? And thankfully, the rain kind of just answered my prayers, man. Like, there is a God. The rain just poured in, cut these plans short. But yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off, Tim. What was your question about?
Yeah, you told the girlfriend, like, hold that thoughts.
Yeah.
My boy, no, I've been saying playing. Like for the last couple of weeks that everybody keeps talking about a number six. We need a DM and stuff like that. And I feel like, the one that we're looking for that role that fits the slot system is more like a Mac Jones kind of player. So this is where Gravenberg can make himself a spot. How thrilled are you that he's getting a shot? And is it a fair shot after being out for so long?
Fair shot is up to debate. It depends on who you're asking. I think it's a fair shot, although to be fair, we're talking about new manager coming in. It's basically a clean slate for everyone. So I believe the fairest way to go about it is to give everyone their 45, their 60 minutes, whatever, depending on fitness. So I think on that metric, it is fair. Now, obviously, on the question whether he's going to be a good fit or not, we always talked about Gravenberg being better playing in a double pivot rather than maybe that left-sided or right-sided midfielder in the 4-3-3. Whereas here, if he's going to be partnering with Jones, you'd assume that Jones being the player who does more defensive work, who's more disciplined with the tackle, would be the guy to sit back, which affords Ryan kind of the license to go forward more. And if you give him that license and less to worry about what's happening behind him because he's got Jones there sweeping up, I feel like we could really find that player. We could really get that player that we kind of sought out for when he played for Bayern Munich. Now, is he going to be rusty? Is he going to have a few bad touches? Yes, expect that. A few loose touches, a few loose passes. But I believe this is the appropriate situation for him in terms of the setup, the style, and of course, like I mentioned, the freedom. I think it's just the perfect setup for him, Tim. Obviously, it'll take a few games for him to get back into form and fitness, but hey, let's see how he does this 45, right? Like,
I mean, for the fans of Gravenberg, Brian, that sounds like a really great scenario. But at the same time, I guess the fear I have is maybe Jones is thinking, Curtis is thinking the same thing. If Gravenberg is going to sweep behind me, so it's going to be a huge adjustment in these guys' parts. I mean, to be able to get into that role. And this is why, we were talking about it with Kazi yesterday. It was a lot more important and valuable for Curtis to come back earlier and get familiar with the system while Johns Gravenberg was out there vacationing and not coming in early. Because tactically, that's probably my biggest fear with this system is who's going to stay disciplined and know that I'm going to stay back because I just saw the other guy push up, vice versa.
Well, I think it's all making room possibly for Trent to go there and go that double pivot. I thought about it. I thought about it.
Made it like 6 minutes, Brian.
I thought about it. We talked about it a little bit on Thursday right there, but the more we talked about it, the more it kind of is starting to make sense. Because I think that Bradley is more suited for this type of for this type of system because he does go back and forth with defensive responsibility, and we all know how much of a headache that we have about Trent with defending at times. Even though he does on occasion have a good defensive match, but I do think that Trent is a better on the ball than Bradley, and I think I think this double pivot may suit him better. The thing is right there, who's going to be on that other side to go back and hold to stay back. I don't know if I don't know whether Gravenberg is that type of player to actually go back and stay and hold back. I think I don't want to use Maka in that spot because that was wait till we waste Maka, which means that we need to go in for a number 6 because I don't think that to replace that because I think the smoke right there about Endo about his coach they're turning down that I think that if we were offered the right amount of money, I think that we would let Endo go, and I think that how we have it Bacic and Morton as your only other defensive midfielders, you basically have to go into the market for a defensive midfielder if you let Endo go. And I was listening to somebody else this morning right there, and they were saying that Endo really technically isn't a slot type of player. I mean, because and so that would make him even more susceptible to go there moving on to another club. So yeah, I think that we're just waiting for Trent to come in that spot. I think it's probably going to wind up happening.
Yeah, that person was probably listening to me the day before because I really don't think. Yes, technically, I don't think it just works the way what this system requires. So far from what we've seen and from what he's done in Feyenoord, it just doesn't look like. I mean, that's why it looks more like a Mac kind of 6. Like Mac fits this perfectly as the 6. To be honest with you, I know we say we don't want him because we don't maybe more push forward, but the 6 in this one is very he's always on the move. Like, there were a couple of times when Endo played and suddenly he found himself where an 8 would be. That's because what the system allows. And then when he sees that, he gets scared and runs back because he doesn't want to be there because naturally that's not his spot. And I don't blame him for that. So that's why I think we go to that. But let's go back to this freaking Trent thing since we could only last 6 minutes and 4 seconds before Jonathan brings it up and pulls it into the conversation. Does that really depend on Bradley at this point, John? So like to the point where Bradley is so good, he can't be denied that spot. So it makes the decision easier or forces the decision almost because we're like, well, we got to use this guy. He's too good there. We can use this guy. Meaning Trent in the middle.
Ooh, well, I've been on this camp, as you know, Tim.
Sadly, yes.
Yes, I've been on this camp, and and I'm not saying that the points that you put out, the points that Gally put out, the points that people who say Trent won't be a good midfielder put out aren't valid. They are very much valid. But this is a very talented footballer who I feel like can adjust his game accordingly and just needs the appropriate number of reps to do so.
If he could adjust his game accordingly, why doesn't he adjust his defending and cover in the back post? If that was true.
He just doesn't have I don't think he just has the motivation to do that, Tim.
See, I feel like a very shitty character.
Yeah, I know it's a shitty reason. Like, I'm not defending Trent.
No, I hear you.
I'm not defending Trent's lack of defending. Like, dude, if you were going to ask me, I played goalkeeper for soccer and I was a defensive specialist when I played basketball. So defense was always my thing. When I see him slack off, it's ridiculous. But then at the end of the day, this is a generational player that I feel like, especially on the offensive end, is someone that we won't be seeing for another 20 years, right? So I feel like this is someone that it's his next step, whether we like it or not, is that midfield role. Now, do I see him being placed there immediately? No. The answer is no. But then Bradley's performances have been pretty much the best of both worlds, right? If we're talking about the player who stood out the most in this US tour, obviously there's the Vandenberg shouts, rightfully so. But then, Bradley's been there. He's kind of, he's kind of, I know a lot of people, especially, like some of us in the morning show said that maybe we're getting on the Connor train too early and all that. Maybe he's not yet going to be that world-class player that we think he's going to be. But then what he's doing now in this, albeit it is preseason, but we did face Arsenal, who was the second best team in the Premier League last year and who went full force against us, right? Who really stood up and tried to attack us. He did not look out of place. He looked like he was continuing his purple patch last year. Would you even still call it a purple patch? Because a purple patch is kind of like just a good spell of form that eventually wears off. Yeah. He just continued that. So listen, these are happy problems, right? These are very happy problems to have. And the thing is with Arnie, I don't know. I feel like he can go wrong here, but then but I think he's more on the camp that he can't go wrong because I feel like Trent's that kind of player that he will, adjust and excel in that holding role eventually. But then again, a lot of people are going to disagree with me. So
I don't know who that could be. But no, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. And that's what probably annoys me. And this is why I blame Pep for all this, Brian personally, because I think really do, because I think the worst thing that happened to Trent and his defending was the fact that the thought of him being in midfield, because I think once we started that experiment, he was like, you know what? Yes, I should be a midfielder, and he kind of like left the defensive stuff, and it started like working back less and less and less. And it does look at times as effort. Sometimes it's just concentration and like ball watching, but sometimes it's just freaking effort. And I think that's just what gets to me, I guess. Maybe that's why I'm so defensive about him moving up, because I feel like it's rewarding kind of like a poor attitude towards
that's a good point. That's a good point.
Valid point.
And that's, I mean, I don't know, we will see it. I'm like, aside from all that, I just don't like him as much. We saw it in England too, and I know England is a hot mess and Southgate and all that kind of stuff, Brian, but my thing with him is he's not as comfortable when he gets and not as effective when he receives the ball facing his own goal and has to turn and stuff with it. You get the best out of Trent when he receives the ball and he can kind of like lift his head up and play that long diagonal or put it in front of Mo and stuff like that. I just feel like you kind of lose that when you put him in that, what we do with midfield now, where we overcrowd a little bit, like in a bunch of areas, and try to suddenly play the long ball. I just feel like that takes away from his strength a little bit.
But Trent was the fall guy for England in those two matches. I don't think that Trent really played that bad of a match right there. I mean, if you look at his stats right there in that first match, I mean, his touches. I mean, he was leading in touches. I mean, his passing percentage was pretty high. I think that was just they had to find somebody to blame for the ball not getting across to Harry Kane. So who are they going to blame? Blame the guy that's not in the position he normally plays in. Yeah. So that's pretty much what happened in there. And I think that Southgate kind of bought into it, and they put a worse player in there, like Gallagher, who was absolutely worse than Trent right there in that same position. So it is, I think the problem I have with Trent right there on that right side right there, and especially when you have a player like Konate who likes to run up, is it leaves that whole right side open right there. And we saw this plenty of times last year where the right side Cantor was in a scramble and we weren't able to go through to cover that side. And we left Allison up there in La La Land basically just getting attacked. So Bradley is a lot more disciplined right there of pushing back. And I think that with slot system, which relies more on that double pivot going up toward the center of the pitch versus actually going toward the wings like Klopp did, I think it's going to be more suited right there to have a player that type of player. like Bradley and I'm not going to say this right here. I think that we actually probably need to go in for another left back also, because I don't think that this system is really going to suit Robbo either. I think that Robbo likes to make lots of runs up, and I don't think and slot system isn't on the wings. It's in the middle of the pitch. It's ball play toward that setting up play in the back third, working to the middle to your center pivot. So your double pivots basically go there take are the quarterbacks of this side, versus where how we had Trent Robbo as our quarterbacks on either side right there, if you're in American football terms, to drive the ball in right there. That doesn't work this way with slot systems. So I think that we're left lacking with having Trent in that position, because I think that we're not going to see him on the ball as much as he wants to be on the ball, and which is his best attribute right there, which is being on the ball.
See, I feel like it almost helps him, but I know we're looking at a small sample size, John. We're looking at the first 2 games, and obviously we have some history with Feyenoord and stuff like that. But I kind of like how those backs are a little bit in sometimes, not too wide when we're defending. So we win the ball fast, and then when we win the ball, if Trent wins that ball there, I feel like he can look up and he can send a long diagonal to Diaz, a long ball over the top to Nunez, a long ball to like Mo, and he can make that pass. So can Van Dijk and stuff like that. So you have players in the back that can make that pass. Maybe that's why I like him there. And also, don't you think the double pivot almost helps Trent's defensive walls in some ways, because there's a lot of crowding of that middle there, and you can kind of have, Jones or Gravenberg or Mac or Endo or whoever the heck is going to play that role. Kind of what Hendo used to do is kind of cover that area and all those spaces behind Trent.
Right. If there's also one observation that I kind of took off from our first 2 preseason games, and especially the Arsenal one, because as good as decent as a team Betis is, like Arsenal is the benchmark. They're like probably into the peak of their project with Arteta. Like this is the team that Arnie wants to emulate to challenge Man City, and we held our own. When it was like 11v11 of our potential best 11 on the day against their potential best 11, we were actually controlling play at times. Some of the patterns that granted, they missed quite a bit of, they missed a few big chances too, but we missed some as well. So it was a pretty even game, and especially, all things considered, we were a pretty new side with our manager. But going back to what I was saying, what I liked the most is how solid we looked out of possession. And this isn't a knock on Klopp, right? Because I understand Klopp's propensity to push the line higher up the pitch so we could win the ball up. But here there seemed to be some sort of okay, we'll drop down, we'll trust in our defense that we can, win the ball back with our press. And if it doesn't work back, we'll just be able to, we'll be able to hold out. Like, I guess I didn't take that comment from Jones that whole patience thing, but then I'm starting to see what he means with Arnie here about how the team is a bit more patient, a bit more composed in terms of coming up with transitions, in terms of retrieving the ball, not necessarily trying to force an attack for the sake of it, right? Like, it was actually frustrating towards the end because there were loads of opportunities. We just had no out ball. And what I liked about the young kids, that they know it was there, they just weren't good enough to get into those positions. So it's going to be a very interesting watch to see how this team gels. I agree with you, Tim. I feel like Trent would be better protected in this system, especially with two midfielders who are more inclined to sit back and more like reading the play instead of trying to push up. But again, this is an entirely different challenge. We're facing a United team that wants us to have the ball now. And then they're going to try and pick off the gaps in, try and hit us on the counter. So it's going to be interesting to see how Slot is going to set up his team here, because like it's great that if he could do it against a team that wants to play with you, but then against 90% of the guys in the PL, you're going to be having the ball like 95% of the time. You're going to have to break it down. So how do you adjust your team? That's the next step I see for Arnie here, because it looks like he's set the foundations pretty nicely if we're going by this very small sample size.
And that's what I was going to say. I mean, that looks, and the patient looks great when we're playing at a bigger team. I can just see that backfiring, Brian, if we're at home is 0-0 and we're going against, I don't know, like, Crystal Palace or something like that. And we have to get to 3 points. We're home or whatever the case might be. And I know, especially because fans are used to being that ball played in right away as a fast attack, especially if the game is tight and we're struggling, you're going to see some rumblings and humbles and mumbles going around the stands as we are maybe considered to be too patient. And let's face it, I mean, in this preseason, it's similar to, when we talk, you were just mentioning American football. It's similar to that, where you're not really prepping for the other team. You're kind of doing your own thing. You're trying to make sure your thing works. So there's not a lot of prepping to stop what we're doing. So how much of a gauge do you think this specific game is? Like John brought it up as an example of a team that, tries to counter more as opposed to Arsenal. How much can you look at these games and kind of like pick and choose the strategy?
I mean, I think we're still going to play kind of similar to what we played against Arsenal, where the our front third of the pitch right there is going to be a lot more possession based than Klopp, because and you can see with the amount of passing that was in that section, it was a totally different thing from Klopp, where it wasn't as direct. It was more of a picking apart kind of process right there, where they were moving the ball around, trying to find like certain weaknesses in Arsenal's defense. And I think you're going to see more of that. The one thing that fascinated me about the Arsenal match was the placement of Carvalho. I didn't think that Carvalho was going to be an out left type of midfielder, because I kind of felt like he was more in that number 10, more of a number 10 supporting a number 9 type of role, with it just kind of like how Coutinho was in a way, and because he's a very much similar type of player to him as far as movement with the ball and in that type of kind of like little quirky type of little player, where I thought that Szoboszlai right there would have been a better person to put out on the wide end. So I'm curious to see, and I really want to see him actually put Slabo out wide and try to see how he reacts, because he did play with that with the RBL. I mean, that was he played there a lot out there to the width, and see how that would work in the system, because Klopp never played him there. He always played right there, more or less at that number, kind of like a number 8 just about the entire time. And I'd rather see him go out to a different force and all that, and especially him countering with on the other side of Mo. I think it'd be a very interesting dynamic to see how United's defense could be able to handle that. The one thing I also did put for the Arsenal match, I think we're going to see more, is our front third pressing that we've been doing in there with Slot, because we're no longer doing the full pitch press that Klopp can introduce. That it's kind of like a Geigen pressing light, where it's like more direct, like toward that front part, to go there and cause mistakes on the ball, which we saw Arsenal did a lot of times in that match right there. And I think that a Team United, we could probably exploit them, because I think that they're going to want to play more kids than they're going to play starter, because I think they see what they wanted to see for the most part. I mean, with their sides, and I think some of the play, and so I think that they have more people they want to try to get out, like McTominay. I think his fitness, I doubt you'll even see him play, because I think that they're trying to sell him, and I think West Ham is ready to take him as soon as he gets in there. So I just want to see us go there and just keep on going there doing a possession base that we've been doing, and let these players learn.
Yeah, it's like a tricky game for teams, because you want to put your guy on the shelf to sell, but at the same time you don't want to get him hurt, because you're definitely not going to sell him. So it is kind of like a tricky proposition.
Right.
So before we go, I mean, I guess I'll do my pick, because I'm not going to let you pick Gravenberch, but I'll be watching Gravenberch specifically because I want to see, because he does seem to be playing in that role that we anticipate him to be in. I want to see how he does, because I do think, and I think we talked about it on Wednesday or Friday, that he could be one of those guys that fits there. And if we talk about, Arne wants to see people, this is probably one of those people he wants to see in that spot to see how it works. Since you can't pick Gravenberch now, who will you be watching, John?
I want to see more of Elliott at the 10, which I feel like he's been. Betis, he was okay. Arsenal, he was really good with space to exploit. Granted, he still missed a few key passes here and there as he's looking to get accustomed to the role. But I can see him possibly making that role, arguably his own, because he's probably second choice to Szoboszlai there. But the good news is that he and Szoboszlai can interchange there and in the wing positions when needed. So, but I feel like in terms of who's made a bigger impression between him and Sobo on that role, it's definitely Harvey for me. So looking forward to seeing him more there, especially in transitions is where I'm really interested in watching him. Can he make that right decision quicker than he did against Arsenal? He came up with 2 assists, but he could have had 4. right? Could have had.
Yeah, see, I liked one of them where he kind of like, used Mo as a decoy because everybody and their brother expected that pass. So he did a good job of the decoy. He just couldn't cut back to take the shot. So I give him that one, but I know there was another case too. So yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think if you didn't know prices, Harvey would be a no-brainer, even though I think, what Szoboszlai does off the ball is getting overlooked. What we loved. What I loved, especially for Hendo, for doing what he did, I see a lot coming from Szoboszlai over these last 2 games in terms of defensive work rate and stuff like
He's
that.
not playing though, is he? He's not playing.
Is he in the 11?
Yeah, I think I saw a piece of news before we got on air.
No.
Yeah,
he is not. So I wonder, and that's why I think we're thinking is Jones, Gravenberg, and then Elliott's in front of him, and then Mo.
Fabio,
Jota,
Carvalho.
and Carvalho, right? Brian, who are you watching?
I'm watching Kwanzaa on the left as a left center half. I want to see how he does when we eventually Verge leaves our side. I want to see because I think he's the heir apparent to Verge. I want to see how he works that, and I want to see how his communication with Simicast works. Because obviously with Simicast is like Galley right there. He's the odd man. He's the odd man out pretty much for everything. I mean, so I want to see how Kwanzaa and Konate flipped over act. I mean, because we see him subbed in that little bit. I want to see how they do for a whole full 45 of that match. And again, like what John said, I want to see how Elliott does it. Continue to see how Elliott does it with those responsibilities at number 10 slot. And I think. And I want to get Jota in for a full 60 minutes right there, so we can see his fitness.
I don't think you're gonna see that. To be honest with you, I don't think
so.
I don't think
I'd like
it. That. I think it's 45.
I feel like if he gets those chances again in the first game, he bangs it for sure.
Yeah,
he did hit the post. That wasn't a bad poorly taken one or something like that. But of course, we say that. But if it was Nunez who hit the post, we'd be like, he hit the post again.
As Kazi says, Tim, credit in the bank.
Yes,
right?
True. So quick predictions on the way out. I did call for the very first Timuchin special of the season at a 3-1. John, what do you have?
I will double that.
6-2.
No, sorry. I mean another Timuchin special. I'm sorry. Give me another one. Make it 2. Yeah, make it 2 specials, please.
hey, might as well make it 3. So it's a trifecta.
Yeah.
Let's go with the 3-in-1. Okay, so we'll see you guys after the game. We'll give everybody some time to settle in and tune into the game. Hopefully it starts on time. It looks like it is, and hopefully it ends up on time. And we'll be here for a quick post-match as well. I'll see you gentlemen then, and I'll see you guys later. Enjoy the game, everybody. Take care.
Take care, guys.